Genshin Impact's patch 6.1, aka Luna 2, will bring highly sought after 5 stars, but between a new character, Archons, and a top tier DPS, a lot of people are having trouble deciding who to wish for. That's why in this video, we're going to go over Nefer, Furina, Zhongli, and Arlecchino's strengths, weaknesses, and pull value for your account. That way you can be sure you're making the best decision and not wasting your precious primo gems. With that being said, if there is someone who you just really want, then just go ahead and wish for them, because this is a guide that is designed to help you figure out what these characters can do well and what they struggle with, so that you can be best prepared to play them at their maximum potential. Make sure to like this video if it helps, and share it with anyone who may be wondering who to wish for, and let me extend my thanks for doing so, as it really does help out a ton. Now let's talk about Nefer, the femme fatale and green Yalan of Nod Cry. Nefer is a Dendro Catalyst DPS that focuses on the Lunar Bloom reaction. Her elemental skill has 2 charges and grants her a special stance that lets her do a special charged attack. Performing a charged attack this way will consume 1 Verdant Dew generated from the Lunar Bloom reaction, and the resulting charge attack will summon Dendro clones that deal direct Lunar Bloom damage based off Nefer's elemental mastery. In this way, she's very similar to Flynn's. Her non-lunar damage is quite bad, but her elemental skill puts her in a special state that allows her to deal direct lunar damage, which makes up the vast majority of her damage output. Nefer is also a character that scales entirely off of elemental mastery, so building her requires a lot of elemental mastery, but also crit rate and crit damage because lunar blooms can crit, but attack is pretty useless on her. You can also cut down on her rotation time and increase your team's damage by dash canceling Nefer's charged attack. Once the first hit of her special charge attack hits an enemy, you can dash and the remaining clones will still hit the enemy afterwards, allowing you to massively speed up her animation time. Dash canceling her charge attacks also makes weaving in her elemental burst a much better option, since without dash canceling, her burst really isn't great for team rotations. And for more Nod Cry propaganda, when you have Nefer and at least one more Nod Cry character in the team, she changes all bloom cores into Seeds of Deceit, which cannot be interacted with. So that means no Bloom, Hyper Bloom, or Burgeon for Nefer with at least one more Nod Cry character in the team. But in exchange, her damage gets a big increase, since Nefer can absorb up to 3 of these seeds whenever she does her charge attack, giving her an additional damage multiplier and elemental mastery at 3 stacks. So even though having 2 Nod Cry characters in your team shuts off the potential for Bloom, Hyper Bloom, and Burgeon teams, it makes Nefer a lot stronger, and it's well worth the trade-off. And while Nefer may have stolen your heart, is she actually worth your primo gems? It's time to give her a rating. Nefer's personal damage is great. Her main contribution to the team is being an on-field damage dealer, and her damage is similar to Flynn's, so she's not the strongest character in the game, but she's hardly a weak character either. Nefer's support capability is bad. She is an on-field damage dealer, and you have to build a team around her, so don't expect her to be supporting any other character. Nefer's team flexibility is bad. She basically has one team, which is a Lunar Bloom team, and considering she wants one of those characters to be a Nod Cry character, your team flexibility options drop even more. Luckily, everyone gets I Know for free, but that still doesn't change the fact that she has very little team versatility. On top of that, Nefer really appreciates Lauma in her team, and while she isn't unplayable without Lauma, there's a big difference in team performance when Lauma is on the team versus when she's not. Nefer's free-to-play friendliness is good. Despite having poor team flexibility, it's not hard for even a newer free-to-play player to make Nefer work well. One of her best weapons is the Black Marrow Lantern, which is a craftable catalyst from Nod Cry. And I Know is a free character that everyone can pair with Nefer to activate the important Ascendant Gleam and multiplicative damage boost from Nefer's passive. So how valuable is Nefer overall? She's pretty good. Nefer is a solid damage dealer with some nice free-to-play options that can get better with more premium supports and investment. While she isn't breaking any records, the free-to-play version of Nefer, especially with dash cancels and optimized combos, is enough to clear endgame content with relative ease, at least until Hoyo decides to power creep more and more characters. I would recommend Nefer if you already have Lauma and want a nice DPS partner for her, or if you just really like her. If you don't know if you should get her, then I would recommend saving your Primo Gems because there's always going to be stronger damage dealers and you might find one that you like even more. Recommended teammates and teams for Nefer include Lunar Bloom teams with Nod Cry supports like Lauma and Ino, Nahida is also a good choice, and just about any other support that buffs Elemental Mastery and Lunar Reaction damage will find a nice place with Nefer. Now let's talk about Furina, the personality-shifting god of water and justice that's basically just what happens when you make Fischl the queen of everything. Furina is a Hydro support character that is capable of dealing damage, healing, and increasing team damage from off-field, but she will also drain your entire team's health. Furina's elemental skill has two forms. The first form summons 3 watery friends to deal hydro damage based on Furina's max HP. They will also drain the HP of all party members on the team in order to deal more damage to enemies. The second form of Furina's skill summons a healing pet that heals the active character only, but it doesn't deal any damage or apply any hydro. Just as Furina is prone to dramatic swings of emotion, your party's dramatic changes in HP are integral to Furina's kit and how she buffs the team. Furina's burst deals AoE hydro damage and gives your party members a damage boost whenever anyone in the party gains or loses HP. This damage boost counts the changes of your entire party, so the best way to get the maximum value out of this buff is to lose and then gain HP very quickly. Furina takes care of the HP loss for your party, so having a healer who can heal the whole team with the press of a button becomes really valuable. Importantly, the buff from her elemental burst affects almost every character, but it doesn't affect characters that deal transformative reaction damage or lunar reaction damage. So Bloom, Hyper Bloom, Burgeon, and lunar reaction teams don't get much benefit from Furina. So, how good is Furina? Is the god of water and justice a righteous use of your Primo Gems, or is she irredeemable? It's time to give the Archon/Director Extraordinaire a rating. Furina's personal damage is good. She is primarily a support, but does decent damage from off-field, and this damage is amplified by her elemental burst. Her damage feels great in the overworld, but in endgame scenarios, it's the buff from her elemental burst that ends up being the real star of the show. Furina's support capability is great. Furina is a support character that really only needs 2 things: a character who heals, and teammates that want to get damage percent increases. Since so many characters really appreciate her buffs and moderate amount of off-field hydro application, Furina becomes a really useful support that brings more offensive utility than characters like Yelan or Xingqiu, despite having weaker hydro application. There are only a few instances when having Furina on your team is actually a bad thing, and those situations are only when you're trying to build a transformative reaction or lunar reaction team, which do tend to have their own niche setups anyways. Furina's team flexibility is great. She can pair with almost any character in the game and make them feel better, despite the fact that she also kind of kills the entire team. However, she also makes older and less used characters like Jean a lot more relevant. Furina's free-to-play friendliness is great. Her support capability and team flexibility make her a great choice for almost any player, especially free-to-play players. And unless you plan on getting certain characters and building specific teams that don't want her damage percent buffs, she's useful for just about everybody. And again, the teams that don't like Furina are a bit more niche, but they can feel a little bit more necessary or stronger or needed depending on how much propaganda Hoyo is currently pushing. But beyond Furina's level of versatility, she also has good free-to-play weapon options like the Ferryman of Fluvsond and the Nodcry craftable sword. Furina's overall rating is great. Furina is one of the most versatile characters in the game that offers some off-field hydro damage as well as damage buffing. She can also heal the active character and enable teams and characters that aren't commonly used. She also has good free-to-play weapon options, and while she saps your team's HP away at every opportunity she can, it's pretty easy to get used to it and a worthwhile trade-off for what she provides. Recommended teammates for Furina include any full team healer like Jean or Yao Yao, characters that gain and lose HP quickly like Nouvelette, and really just any other character who appreciates damage percent increases, which is almost all of them. It's actually a lot easier to talk about some of the characters that don't want Furina on their team, and these happen to be characters whose teams do not benefit from Furina's damage percent bonuses. For example, Hyperbloom teams, Nilou teams, or Flynn's teams. Now let's talk about Arlecchino, one of the Harbingers and Pyro damage dealer that some affectionately refer to as Father. Her kit seems very complicated at first, but in practice it's actually really easy to play. Just use her elemental skill, wait for the mark her skill applies to get bigger, then use a charged attack. You can also use a charged attack right away if your mark hits multiple enemies. Doing this will give Arlecchino a bond of life, which prevents her from being healed by anything except her elemental burst, and her normal attacks gain a pyro infusion and a big damage bonus. Her elemental burst does a single instance of pyro damage, and it also heals her, with the heal being greater the more bond of life she has, and her elemental burst also resets the long cooldown of her elemental skill. Since Arlecchino's damage is tied to her bond of life and not an ability duration, she has a little bit more leeway with her rotations, and since her damage is also very front-loaded, she works well against waves of enemies, and also when you need to defeat enemies relatively fast. The biggest downside to Arlecchino is that she cannot be healed in combat except by her elemental burst, so it can feel risky to play her without a shield or other defensive support. Arlecchino works very well in a variety of teams like Vaporize, Reverse Melt, Chevreuse Overloaded, Mono Pyro, and more. She's pretty free-to-play friendly, making good use out of the free-to-play Spear, the White Tassels, and even working well with many different 4-star characters. So how good is Arlecchino? Should you burn your primos to pay off her blood debt, or is it better to remain fatherless for this Harbinger? Arlecchino's personal damage is good to great. Her damage is good on its own, but it gets drastically increased by your teams and how invested you are in your supports. This means her damage can fluctuate quite a lot between players, and you might not get as much mileage out of Arlecchino as someone who has built up really good supports for her. Arlecchino's support capability is bad. She is an on-field damage dealer and needs a team built around her being on-field, otherwise she's not contributing anything at all. Arlecchino's team flexibility is good. Arlecchino has a lot of good team options, even if several of them consist of limited 5-stars. Arlecchino Vaporize with Xingqiu or Yelan and an Anemo character, Overloaded with Chevreuse, Hypercarry with Xilonen, Melt with Citlali, and even pseudo-lunar charge teams with a Nefer all work really well. Even though Arlecchino works in a variety of teams, her Bond of Life mechanic can make things a little bit tricky sometimes, since turning off her healing makes characters like Furina much worse for Arlecchino. Arlecchino's free-to-play friendliness is okay. Arlecchino can use the R5 White Tassels, a free-to-play 3-star spear, and it will outperform a lot of 4-star gacha weapons. And she also does well with a variety of 4-star characters. However, Arlecchino does really appreciate having more premium options like a 5-star weapon and some 5-star supports. She can do very well at free-to-play levels, especially with a Chevreuse Overloaded team, but better supports and weapons make her shine so much brighter. Arlecchino's overall value is good. She is a solid damage dealer that has a good amount of versatility. Despite how annoying it feels that her Bond of Life prevents her from healing outside of her elemental burst in combat, Arlecchino is pretty easy to play. She's mostly an indicator of how developed your account is. If you have several good supports that are well built, Arlecchino will feel good. But if you're newer and have fewer characters that are not well built, then she's not really going to feel that strong. Recommended teammates and teams for Arlecchino include shield characters like Lanyan or Citlali, especially in melt teams, attack buffers like Bennett, Vaporize supports like Xingqiu and Yelan, as well as Anemo characters, overloaded characters like Chevreuse and Fischl, and there's plenty of other characters that work well with her like Nefer and Xilonen. Our next 5-star on the list is the Moralist Moocher and the only 5-star to actually get buffed after his initial release, Zhongli. Zhongli in Genshin lore is an extremely powerful war god. In game, however, he takes a much more defensive approach. Zhongli is a Geo character that is mainly used for his incredibly durable shield. It not only blocks a ton of damage, but it also has a 150% shield strength multiplier, meaning however much damage your Zhongli shield blocks, it will effectively block 1.5 times more than that. His shield also lasts the longest of any character, and it can have over 100% uptime provided it doesn't break. On top of all the defensive capabilities, enemies within range of shielded characters will have every one of their elemental resistances and physical resistances reduced by 20%. The rest of Zhongli's kit isn't quite as useful as his shield. His skill summons a pillar that has a small AoE and deals geo damage, and if it comes into contact with other geo constructs, it will make them pulse as well, thereby increasing the size of the geo AoE. But oftentimes you don't want this pillar to hit enemies because the geo element can mess up the reactions you actually want to make, so people will sometimes cast Zhongli's skill in a corner just to get the shield and then fight enemies in the opposite corner so the pillar does not come into contact with them. Zhongli's burst is a spectacular meteor that smashes to the ground and petrifies enemies. The damage of the skill is okay, and the petrification can be nice even though it is pretty short, but it is often considered a DPS loss to use his burst, so it's more of a skill you'd use for fun, rather than one you'd use because it's the strongest option available. Zhongli's shield makes most of Genshin easy mode, and a lot of people have said he's a must-pull character. So, is the Geo Archon still a rock-solid option, or has his value crumbled over time? Zhongli's personal damage is bad. He is a support character through and through, and despite the seemingly high multipliers on his elemental burst, you're bringing him for his shield, not his damage. Zhongli's support capability is good. Zhongli's shield makes so much of Genshin Impact just feel really easy, and that's very nice for players who have high ping or could use the extra protection. However, beyond the shield, he only offers a bit of resistance reduction, and other support characters just offer a lot more than he does. Zhongli's team flexibility is good. You can splash Zhongli into pretty much any team, especially ones that want a shield. And while he's super universal, he's also never the first choice for a team. If the team needs a shield character, there are often much better choices than Zhongli. So even though he works almost everywhere, there are plenty of better options, and several of them are actually 4-star characters. Zhongli's free-to-play friendliness is good. Zhongli makes the game feel really comfy. Just build him with a lot of HP and use his super tanky shield everywhere. His damage may be really low, but sometimes players just want to chill, and if they're not too concerned with the endgame or more difficult content, then having a character that provides a really strong shield can be pretty nice. Combine this with Zhongli's versatility and his ability to use a 3-star weapon like the Black Tassels, and he's a really nice choice for comfort, even if he's not the best character. Zhongli's overall rating is okay. He's a comfy character, but honestly just doesn't offer enough to justify pulling anymore, especially when other shield characters just do so much more than he does. Lanyan is a 4-star shield character that can use the Viridescent artifact set and the Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers, making her an overall better buffer than Zhongli is. And other 5-star shield characters like Nefer and Citlali are also a lot more valuable than the Geo Archon. Even though I used Zhongli for years on every single overworld team I ran, I can't recommend using your limited Primo Gems to get him when much better options exist. Recommended teams for Zhongli include basically any team that wants a shield, particularly charge shot bow characters or characters like Arlecchino. With all the character ratings, who should you wish for? Well, Furina seems like the obvious choice, and she is a great character and the best in this group of characters, but it might actually be best for you to save your Primo Gems and wish for someone in a later patch. The reason for this is that Hoyo keeps doing a lot of nod-cry propaganda, and we still have a lot of characters to release like Columbina, Varka, Durin, Alice, and more. If you are concerned primarily for the endgame and building the strongest amount of teams with the fewest amount of Primo Gems spent, then it may be better to just save your Primo Gems and wish for characters in the future. In spite of the fact that Furina is really useful, she does not increase lunar reaction damage, and that seems to be what Hoyo keeps pushing and pushing and pushing. And if I was a newer player or wasn't really concerned about doing the highest level of endgame at this point, then I would wish for Furina. But if I wanted to take on the higher level of the Abyss or Stygian Onslaught, then I'd probably save my Primo Gems or wish for Nefer if I had Lauma. I'm personally on the fence about Nefer, as I do have Lauma, but I also have some other well-invested damage dealers, and I don't want Nefer to just end up on the bench like so many other damage dealers before her. So my suggestion is that if you are not 100% sure about which character you're going to get, just wait for now and wait at least a week until after the patch launches, because then we'll have a much better idea about the value of certain characters and who is going to be best to wish for. And if you're wondering who is best for you, then just come on by to the live streams and ask me there. I stream on both Twitch and YouTube at the times on screen, and I'd be happy to help you figure out who is the best character to wish for you. So if you need a little bit more clarification, feel free to come by either Twitch or YouTube streams and we'll be able to help you out. That'll be it for this one, everyone. Stay jawsome, and I can't wait to see you on stream.